My daughter-in-law shoved me off a yacht to steal $3 billion. When they came home, I was waiting with a surprise they never imagined. Those words still echoed in my mind like a haunting whisper. If anyone had told me a year ago that my own son and his wife would plot my death, I would have laughed. But there I was, falling helplessly into the freezing Atlantic Ocean, betrayed by the people I loved the most. The salt water stung my eyes, and for a terrifying second, I wondered if this was how my life would end. But let me take you back to how that day began, because the nightmare didn't start in the water. It started with a phone call that felt so warm at the time, but in reality, it was the first step in their cruel trap. If this story touched your heart and you have a story of your own, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so you never miss more stories like this. That morning, the phone rang earlier than usual. It was my son, Andrew. Not his secretary, not his assistant, him. I should have known something was off right then. "Mom," he said with that familiar charm in his voice. "We're going out today. Just the three of us. Me, you and Claire. We want to celebrate your recovery from surgery. A little family cruise. It'll be beautiful." Family. That word still meant something to me. I had spent 6 long weeks healing from hip replacement surgery, and the truth was, I was desperate. Desperate for closeness, for signs that Andrew and Claire still cared for me after Robert, my husband, passed away 2 years ago. Since his death, the warmth in our family had turned cold, but I never stopped hoping that love could return. So, I dressed with care that morning. I chose my navy blue dress, the same one Robert always said brought out the color of my eyes. I dabbed on light perfume, fixed my hair neatly, and told myself this day would be special. That maybe, just maybe, my son wanted me near again. When I reached the marina, the sight nearly took my breath away. A gleaming white yacht, bigger than most homes, floated as if it were a palace on water. Andrew greeted me with a hug at the dock. His arms wrapped around me, but it felt like an act, stiff and staged. Claire stood on the deck, her lips curled into a smile so sharp it could cut glass. "Isn't she beautiful?" Andrew said, gesturing proudly toward the yacht. 42 feet of pure luxury. "We're thinking of sailing her to the Caribbean next month." He didn't mention that the yacht had been bought with the $3 million I'd given him last year to invest in his business. That money, I was beginning to realize, never made it into any business account. Still, I tried to brush off my doubts. The first hour passed peacefully enough. The boat sliced through calm waters as the Massachusetts shoreline disappeared behind us. Claire poured mimosas, talking excitedly about renovating their home. My home, actually. The same house I had signed over to Andrew after Robert's death, thinking downsizing to a condo would be easier. But soon the questions started. Casual at first, disguised as small talk. "Mom, have you thought about updating your will?" Andrew asked as he refilled my champagne. "It's just that probate can get so complicated. We just want to make sure everything's simple for you." My hand tightened around the glass. Something about his tone made me uneasy. That's when I noticed Claire holding her phone, not openly filming but angling it slyly, catching me on camera every time I sipped my drink. Pieces began clicking into place. The paperwork they had rushed me to sign after surgery. The temporary power of attorney forms. My financial advisor's sudden silence. It all pointed to one chilling conclusion. I set my glass down. "Andrew," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Take me back to shore." He looked at me then, and the mask he wore slipped away. His eyes, once warm, were hard now, unrecognizable. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Mom." Claire stepped closer, her smile widening as she said, "You've been showing signs of dementia. The doctors agree. You can't manage your affairs anymore. We have it all documented." "That's absurd," I snapped. I was sharper than both of them put together. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of their scheme pressing down on me. They weren't asking, they were preparing. Andrew pulled out a folder of papers, his voice cold. "Sign this. Transfer everything to us, and we'll take care of you. Or, things might get messy." I stared at the documents, then at my son's face. This was the boy I had raised, the boy whose scraped knees I had kissed, whose college I paid for, whose wedding I financed. And now he was threatening me for money. I stood slowly, pain shooting up from my healing hip, but my mind was steady. "And if I refuse?" That's when Claire leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper against my ear. Then you'll say hi to the sharks. The shove wasn't brutal. It didn't need to be. Just a quick push when I was off balance, staring out at the horizon. My body toppled, the world spun, and then the icy Atlantic swallowed me whole. The shock was unbearable. The water burned like fire, dragging me under with the weight of my soaked dress. Above the waves I heard Andrew shouting, "Mom! Oh my God, Mom!" His voice was frantic, almost convincing. But then I caught the faint sound of Claire's voice, lower, speaking into a phone. "Yes. File the petition first thing Monday. She's not competent. The sooner we secure it, the better." And just like that, the yacht sped away, leaving me thrashing in endless merciless water. My son and his wife had abandoned me to die. But fate wasn't done with me yet. The water closed over my head, pulling me into a cold silence so deep it felt like the ocean itself wanted me gone. My chest burned, my limbs thrashed, and for one desperate moment, I thought of Robert. His face flashed in my mind. His laugh, his steady hands when we used to swim laps together every morning. He was gone, and now it seemed I would follow him, not by fate but by betrayal. I forced my body upward, breaking the surface with a gasp. My teeth chattered violently as waves slapped against me. I kicked off my shoes to stay afloat, but my soaked dress dragged me down like an anchor. My arms ached, every muscle screaming, but I refused to give in. Not like this. Not because of them. Through blurred eyes, I caught the faint image of the yacht speeding away. Its white hull gleamed against the horizon, shrinking further and further until it became nothing but a dot. My son wasn't looking back. He wasn't searching for me. He was gone. "Andrew!" My voice cracked as I screamed his name. "Andrew, please." The only answer was the crash of waves. Salt water filled my mouth as I coughed, spitting, choking. Panic clawed at me, but I shoved it down. If I let fear win, I would sink. And I wasn't ready to sink. I kept paddling, kept kicking, even as my arms trembled. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. It was impossible to tell. All I knew was the cold, the loneliness, and the hollow pain in my chest that hurt more than the icy water. How could he do this to me? My son. My flesh and blood. I raised him, loved him, gave him everything he ever asked for. And now I was nothing but an obstacle between him and money. $3 billion had replaced his mother. "God," I whispered, half prayer, half cry. "Don't let me die like this. Please." And then like an answer I saw it. A distant blur moving across the water. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. But as it grew closer, I realized it wasn't a trick of the waves. It was a fishing boat. My arms flailed weakly, signaling. "Help! Over here!" My voice was hoarse, breaking apart with exhaustion. The boat turned, its engine roaring louder as it approached. A man with weathered skin and gray hair leaned over the side. His face was etched with lines from years under the sun, but his eyes were sharp and kind. "Holy hell, lady. Grab my hand." Strong arms reached down, hauling me up with the help of a teenage boy, no older than 16. My body collapsed onto the deck, trembling uncontrollably, water pooling beneath me. I couldn't speak. My jaw chattered too hard. "Grandpa, she's freezing," the boy said, rushing to fetch a blanket. The older man wrapped me in something scratchy that smelled of salt and oil, pressing it around my shoulders. "You're safe now," he said firmly, his voice like steel softened by compassion. "Name's Jack Morrison. This here's my grandson, Tyler." "What the devil happened out there?" My family," I stammered through chattering teeth. They left me." Jack's jaw tightened as he exchanged a glance with Tyler. "We saw that yacht tearing off like the devil was chasing it. Didn't look back once." The truth of it struck me like a knife. They hadn't even hesitated. My life, my blood, my love. It meant nothing compared to what they wanted. "The kind of people who'd abandon you out here," Jack muttered, shaking his head, "aren't family at all." Tears burned in my eyes, hot against the freezing cold. I clutched the blanket tighter, my voice breaking. "They want my fortune. They want me gone." Jack studied me, his weathered eyes narrowing. He had the look of a man who'd seen too much of the world to be easily surprised, but even he seemed shaken. "You've got enemies in your own house. That's worse than sharks." Tyler knelt beside me, holding out another blanket. We called the Coast Guard. They'll meet us. No. My voice came out sharper than I intended, making both of them freeze. I grabbed Jack's arm with trembling hands. Please. Don't tell anyone I'm alive. Not yet. Jack's brow furrowed. Lady, you nearly drowned. You need doctors, the police. They'll know if I survived, I interrupted, desperation pouring out of me. If the Coast Guard finds me, Andrew and Claire will know. They'll try again. I can't let them know. The deck rocked as silence settled between us, broken only by the waves. Jack's eyes locked onto mine, studying me with the weight of a man who understood when someone wasn't just running from cold water. You're in trouble deeper than the ocean, he said quietly. Yes, I whispered. But not the kind you think. Please. Just get me to shore without anyone knowing. Can you do that? Tyler looked uncertain, glancing between us. Grandpa, shouldn't we? Jack held up a hand. Shouldn't don't always mean right and wrong, boy. He turned back to me, his voice steady. All right, ma'am. We'll do this your way. He picked up the radio again, speaking calmly. Coast Guard. This is Molly Sue. False alarm on that debris. Must have been driftwood. All clear. He clicked the device off, his face set like stone. Relief flooded me, and for the first time since that push off the yacht, I felt a flicker of control return. My body was weak, my heart shattered, but inside me, something hardened. Andrew and Claire thought I was gone. They thought they had won. But I was alive. And I was going to make them regret ever underestimating me. Jack's boat moved slowly through the waves, cutting across the endless gray water. I sat curled up on the wooden bench, wrapped in blankets, my body still shaking from the cold. My teeth chattered, but the chill inside me wasn't just from the ocean. It was from betrayal. I stared at my trembling hands. These same hands had once braided Andrew's hair when he was little, had bandaged his knees when he fell, had cooked his favorite meals. And now those hands had been pushed away, tossed aside, because money had blinded him. A son I thought I knew no longer existed. Jack's voice broke through my thoughts. Lady, you need warmth. We'll get you to shore soon. His grandson, Tyler, sat across from me, staring quietly with wide, worried eyes. He finally asked, why would they leave you out there? You're their mom, right? The question tore through me like a knife. I swallowed hard. Because $3 billion is worth more to them than I am. Tyler's face twisted in shock. $3 billion. Jack shot him a look, warning him not to pry, but I shook my head. It's all right. They should know. My late husband built a company. It made us very wealthy. When he passed, everything came to me. I thought sharing would make Andrew feel trusted, feel responsible. Instead, it only made him greedy. Jack let out a low whistle. Money makes monsters out of people who should have been angels. I hugged the blanket tighter, tears slipping down my cheeks. I thought blood meant something. I thought family was unbreakable. I was wrong. Jack placed a rough, weathered hand on my shoulder. You're still alive. That means you've got a chance. The dead don't. His words hit me hard. He was right. As much as I wanted to crumble, I couldn't. If I was still breathing, I still had power. I had choices. Please, I whispered, my voice unsteady. Don't let anyone know you found me. Not yet. They need to think I'm gone. It's the only way I can stop them. Jack nodded slowly, as if weighing my request. We can do that. I know a place. Someone who won't ask questions. You'll be safe. We rowed in silence for a while, the boat rocking gently. The smell of salt and diesel filled the air. I closed my eyes, listening to the engine hum, trying to calm the storm inside me. But then the reality of what waited back on shore crept in. Andrew and Claire weren't just planning to get rid of me. They were building a whole story around it. Fake evidence. Lies about my health. Photos to make me look confused. A paper trail that painted me as weak and senile. I remembered Claire filming me on the yacht. Every sip of champagne, every slurred word from exhaustion. They weren't just killing me physically. They were killing my reputation, my dignity, my memory. To the world, I'd be just another tragic accident of an old woman who couldn't handle her life anymore. I clenched my jaw, rage replacing fear. No, I muttered under my breath. They won't take everything. Not my name. Not my soul. Jack glanced at me. What's that? I'm going to fight back, I said, louder this time. My voice was still shaky, but my heart was firm. They think I'm gone. I'll use that. I'll watch them. I'll learn what they've done. And then I'll destroy every piece of their plan. Tyler's eyes widened. Like revenge. Like justice, I corrected. The boy nodded slowly, almost in awe. Jack, however, just studied me with quiet respect. You've got fire in you. That's good. You'll need it. The hours blurred as we made our way toward shore. The coastline grew clearer until finally, Jack steered the boat into a small cove far from the busy marina. Wooden docks stretched out, empty except for a single cottage tucked against the trees. We'll hide you here, Jack said as he helped me climb down. The woman who runs it. She's tough, but fair. Cash only. She won't talk. The cottage door opened before we even knocked. An older woman with silver hair pulled back in a bun stood there, arms crossed. Her sharp eyes scanned me from head to toe. Jack Morrison, she said, her voice gravelly but warm. What trouble are you dragging to my doorstep now? Jack grinned faintly. Evening. May. Found someone in the water. Needs a place. Off the record. The woman, Mrs. Chen, looked at me without flinching. I must have looked a mess, soaked, pale, trembling, but she didn't ask questions. Instead, she simply said, "Come in. Sit. I'll make soup." The warmth of her kitchen wrapped around me like a second blanket. The smell of broth filled the air as she moved with practiced ease. I sat there, shivering, while Jack explained in quiet tones what had happened. Mrs. Chen never interrupted, never looked shocked. She just ladled steaming soup into a bowl and placed it in front of me. "Honey," she said gently, "I've seen people run from many things in 30 years. As long as you're not bringing violence to my door, you're safe here." I gripped the bowl, the steam fogging my eyes, and whispered, "Thank you." That night, while Andrew and Claire were no doubt filing police reports about their tragically missing mother, I sat in Mrs. Chen's kitchen, my hands wrapped around a bowl of soup, and began to plan. They thought they had buried me. They thought I was nothing but a memory. But I was alive. And I wasn't done yet. The wooden spoon clinked softly against the pot as Mrs. Chen stirred her soup. The smell of chicken and ginger filled the small kitchen, wrapping me in a comfort I hadn't felt in months. I sat at her table, my hands tight around the warm bowl she'd placed in front of me. My body was thawing, but my heart still felt frozen. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Andrew's face on that yacht. Not the face of a stranger, not even of an enemy. No, it was worse. It was the face of my little boy, the child I had raised with all the love I had, now twisted into something cold and greedy. I saw him standing there while Claire smiled and pushed me into the water. And I couldn't stop asking myself why. Mrs. Chen sat down across from me, knitting needles in her hands. She didn't speak at first. She just watched me, like someone who understood that silence sometimes healed better than words. Finally, she said, "You're carrying a lot in your chest. Let it out before it eats you alive." My throat tightened. My son tried to kill me. Her hands paused on the yarn, but her face didn't flinch. "Money." I nodded slowly. $3 billion. My husband built a company. We worked for years, sacrificed everything. When he died, it all came to me. And I trusted Andrew. I thought giving him pieces of it would bring us closer. I thought. My voice broke and I pressed a trembling hand to my lips. I thought love meant more than money. Mrs. Chen's eyes softened, though her voice was steady. Sometimes love and greed sit in the same house. One grows, the other dies. Your boy chose greed. The words cut, but they were true. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, fighting tears. He's my only child. I spent my life making sure he never went without. And now he wants me gone. Just gone. Jack had been sitting quietly in the corner, sipping tea, but he spoke then. "You're alive. That's what matters. They think you're dead, that gives you power. Don't waste it." Power. The word echoed in my head. For the first time since the push, I felt a flicker of control returning. They thought they had erased me. They thought they were free to spin whatever story they wanted. But they didn't know I was still here. Breathing. Watching. Waiting. I set the bowl aside, my hands steadier now. They'll tell the world I drowned. They'll talk about my memory problems, the dementia they've been trying to paint on me. They'll file paperwork, make themselves look like grieving children, and slowly move my money into their hands. Jack leaned forward. Then we beat them at their own game. You need proof. Evidence of what they've been doing. Mrs. Chen nodded. People like that. They always leave a trail. Papers, conversations, someone on the inside helping them. You find it, you use it. My heart pounded. She was right. For weeks, little things hadn't made sense. Documents Andrew insisted I sign after surgery, my financial advisor cutting off contact, Claire always filming me at the worst times. They were building a case, a false picture of me as a helpless old woman. I rubbed my temples. They'll keep lying. To everyone. And people will believe them. I saw the way Claire looked at me on that yacht, with that phone in her hand. She wasn't filming memories. She was filming evidence. Fake evidence. Me drinking, me confused, me vulnerable. They've been planning this for a long time. Tyler, sitting near the counter, spoke quietly. So, what are you going to do? The question hung in the air. My first instinct was to hide forever, to vanish and let them think they'd won. But then I thought of Robert. He built everything with his blood and sweat, and now Andrew and Claire wanted to turn it into a weapon for greed. I thought of the neighbors who still believed in me, the friends who would cry at my funeral, fooled by a lie. And most of all I thought of myself. I wasn't ready to disappear. I straightened in my chair. I'm going to fight. Not with fists. With truth. If they think I'm weak, I'll use it. If they think I'm gone, I'll watch from the shadows. And when the time is right, I'll take everything they built and crush it. Jack's mouth curved into a small smile. Now that's the spirit. Mrs. Chen set down her knitting. But you can't do it alone. You'll need eyes and ears where you can't go. Jack can help at the marina. I'll help with safe shelter. But you'll also need someone who knows the law, who can dig where we can't. Her words lit a fire in me. She was right. This wasn't just family betrayal anymore. It was bigger. Andrew and Claire weren't smart enough to pull this off alone. Someone else was helping them, someone with access, with knowledge of the system. I whispered, almost to myself, I need to know who's behind them. Who's pulling the strings? Jack pushed back his chair, standing tall. Then we start tomorrow. I'll keep an ear open down at the docks. If they're moving fast, we'll hear about it. For the first time since that terrible fall into the sea, I felt strength filling me again. I wasn't just a victim. I wasn't just a mother betrayed. I was still alive, and that meant I still had a chance. That night, as I lay in the small guest room of Mrs. Chen's cottage, I stared at the cracked ceiling and made myself a promise. I would not be erased. I would not let them bury me with lies. Andrew and Claire had turned me into a ghost. But I was going to haunt them until the truth burned everything they built to the ground. The next morning, the sound of gulls crying outside the window woke me. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The blanket felt strange, the room unfamiliar. Then it all rushed back. The push, the ocean, Andrew's cold eyes, Claire's smile. My chest tightened as the memory hit me like another wave. I sat up slowly, my hip aching. The small guest room smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Mrs. Chen had left a folded towel and a set of clean clothes on the chair beside the bed. Simple things, but they felt like a lifeline. I whispered a quiet thank you, even though she wasn't in the room to hear it. When I stepped into the kitchen, Mrs. Chen was already awake, sipping tea. Jack sat across from her, a newspaper in his hands. Tyler was leaning over the table, buttering toast. It almost looked like a normal family morning, something I hadn't felt in years. Morning, Jack said, lowering the paper. His eyes studied me carefully. How are you holding up? I managed a weak smile. Still breathing. That's something. Mrs. Chen slid a cup of tea toward me. You'll need more than breathing. You'll need strength. Both in body and in mind. I nodded, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Did you hear anything? I asked Jack cautiously. About them. Jack's jaw tightened. He folded the newspaper, tapping it with a finger. Front page. Tragic boating accident claims widow's life. My stomach dropped. They already put it in the papers? He pushed the paper toward me. There it was, my name in black ink, an obituary that read like a final verdict. Margaret Blake, beloved mother and widow of Robert Blake, passed away in a tragic boating accident. She was 67. Her family described her as struggling with memory issues in recent years but remembered her as a kind and loving woman. The words blurred as I read them. Struggling with memory issues. That lie again. Claire's fingerprints were all over it. They were painting me as fragile, confused, slipping into dementia. Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them away. They're rewriting me. Making me into someone I'm not. Even in death, they want me to look weak. Mrs. Chen's voice was firm. Then you show the world who you really are. But not yet. Not until the right moment. I gripped the newspaper tightly, my hand shaking. I wasn't angry because of the obituary. I was angry because people would believe it. My friends, my neighbors, my community. They'd all cry for me, pity me, mourn me, thinking I had been declining, when the truth was I was sharper than ever. Jack leaned forward, his voice low. I heard more than what's in the papers. Down at the docks, people are saying your son's already been talking to lawyers. Filing papers about the estate. I swallowed hard. So fast. They have to move fast, Jack said. Because if anyone questioned, if anyone doubted, the cracks might show. But they've got a head start. They'll have everything lined up before anyone realizes what's happened. I sipped the tea slowly, letting the warmth steady me. Then I need to get ahead of them. I need proof. Something that shows what they've been doing. Tyler spoke up suddenly, his young voice breaking the tension. Couldn't you just tell the police? Tell them what happened. I turned to him gently. Sweetheart, if I walked into a police station right now, what would I have? No evidence. Just the word of a woman who's already being painted as confused. They'd call me unstable. Maybe even try to lock me away while Andrew and Claire take everything. His eyes widened. They'd really do that? They already tried, I whispered. Those papers they brought to the hospital after my surgery. They claimed it was temporary, just to help with bills. But I think they were power of attorney forms. They wanted control over everything. Jack nodded grimly. Then you can't just fight with words. You need their own lies turned back on them. Documents, recordings, witnesses. Something solid. Mrs. Chen leaned her elbows on the table. And we start with their story. What they're telling people about you. We'll find the cracks. There are always cracks. I looked between them, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. These people, strangers just yesterday, were now standing beside me more than my own son had in years. Why are you helping me? I asked quietly. You don't even know me. Jack's gaze was steady. Because no one deserves to be thrown away. And because I've got a daughter your age. If she were in trouble, I'd hope someone would help her too. Mrs. Chen smiled faintly. And because I don't like greedy children who think they can bury their elders alive. For the first time since the ocean swallowed me, I let out a small laugh. It was shaky, but it felt good. I pressed the newspaper flat on the table, staring at my obituary. They want me to be dead. Fine. I'll give them what they want. I'll be dead to the world. But from the shadows, I'll be alive enough to ruin them. Tyler tilted his head, curiosity shining in his young eyes. Like a ghost. Yes, I said softly, a strange strength filling me. Like a ghost. One they'll never escape. That night, while the world believed Margaret Blake had been laid to rest at the bottom of the sea, I sat in Mrs. Chen's small kitchen with Jack and Tyler, planning. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing for war. The day after my obituary appeared, the world carried on as if I had already vanished. I was a ghost, watching my own life being buried in ink and whispers. The strangest part was how quickly people believed it. One article, a few fake quotes from Andrew, and suddenly my whole existence had been reduced to a pitiful story about an old woman with memory problems who couldn't survive the sea. I sat at Mrs. Chen's kitchen table, staring at the computer screen she had dusted off for me. It was an old machine, slow with a buzzing fan, but it connected to the news. Every headline I read cut deeper than the last. Grieving son speaks about mother's struggles with dementia. Blake family requests privacy after tragic loss. Donations in memory of Margaret Blake directed to Alzheimer's Association. I clicked on one video, and there was Andrew, my Andrew, standing outside a courthouse in a black suit. His hair was neatly combed, his voice steady. His eyes carefully red-rimmed as if he'd practiced grief in front of a mirror. My mother was. She was struggling more than people knew, he said to reporters. We tried everything to help her, but in the end, accidents happen. It's hard, but we'll honor her memory. Claire stood beside him, clutching a tissue, dabbing at eyes that were suspiciously dry. She leaned into him at all the right moments, playing the part of the devastated daughter-in-law. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest aching. They're good at this, I muttered. Too good. Jack was sitting nearby, repairing a fishing net. He looked up calmly. Actors get caught if the script slips. Everyone looks perfect until they forget a line. That's where you'll catch them. Mrs. Chen set down a plate of dumplings in front of me. Eat. Revenge works better on a full stomach. Despite myself, I smiled faintly. Her bluntness was a strange comfort. But the smile faded as I thought deeper. Andrew wasn't this clever. He wasn't capable of orchestrating something this big alone. Claire had ambition, yes, but she wasn't this polished either. Someone else was guiding them. Someone with knowledge of the law, of estates, of loopholes. I said it out loud without realizing. They have help. Someone behind the curtain. Jack nodded. Then that's who we find. That night, while the cottage creaked in the ocean wind, I sat with a notepad, listing every person who had touched my finances since Robert died. My lawyer. My accountant. My financial advisor. Bank managers. I thought of every conversation, every strange pause, every odd look I'd brushed aside. The truth had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for me to connect the dots. But before I could go further, Jack returned from the marina with news. They're planning a funeral, he said as he placed his hat on the table. Big one. Empty casket. Flowers. The works. Happens in 2 days. A funeral. My funeral. I should have been horrified, but instead, a bitter laugh escaped me. They want to bury an empty box and collect tears like trophies. Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes gleamed. Then you should watch. Sometimes what people do at a funeral says more than what they say in court. 2 days later, Jack drove me to the cemetery. We parked far from the crowd, behind a maintenance shed that overlooked the gravesite. I held a pair of binoculars, my hands trembling as I lifted them. The sight stole my breath. A polished black casket sat at the center, surrounded by white roses. People I had known for decades gathered around it. Neighbors, book club friends, even Dr. Peterson, who had replaced my hip. Some of them were crying openly. And there were Andrew and Claire, dressed in flawless black, playing their roles with expert precision. Andrew shook hands, accepted hugs, bowed his head at all the right moments. Claire dabbed her eyes and clung to him as if he were her lifeline. They looked like the perfect grieving family. They're good, Jack whispered beside me. Too good, I replied, my voice shaking with a mix of fury and sorrow. They're using my death to polish their image. Through the lenses I studied the crowd. And then I noticed something odd. My financial advisor, Richard. My lawyer, Patricia. My accountant, Michael. None of them were there. People who should have been at my funeral, who had handled my fortune for years, they were missing. A chill ran down my spine. They're part of it, I whispered. They have to be. After the service, Andrew and Claire mingled, but I saw how quickly they ended conversations whenever someone asked about my last days. They didn't want details questioned. They wanted control. Back in the truck, my hands shook as I removed the binoculars. This is bigger than just Andrew and Claire. There's a network. And they've done this before. Jack drove us back through winding streets. His silence spoke volumes, but finally he said, Then you're not just fighting your family. You're fighting an entire machine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cottage made me flinch. My mind replayed the funeral, the missing faces, the practiced tears. They were covering their tracks, and I needed to move faster. At dawn, I made my decision. I need to go back, I told Jack over breakfast. Back where? He asked. To my house. My voice was steady, though fear coiled in my stomach. It's not theirs yet. It still has pieces of me. And I need to see what they left behind. Jack frowned. That's dangerous. If they're staying there. They aren't, I interrupted. I checked property records before Robert died. They still had their own house. They're living there now. But mine. Someone's been keeping the lights on. Someone's paying the bills. And I need to know why. That night, Jack dropped me 3 blocks from my old home. I moved quietly through familiar streets, every shadow stretching long in the dim light. My key still worked. Andrew hadn't bothered to take it. Inside, the air smelled different. Not empty, used. Sheets covered some of the furniture, but the refrigerator was stocked with fresh food. Expensive food. Someone was living here. In Robert's old study, I found what I'd been looking for. Papers. Documents. A timeline labeled, Project Margaret. My name. My life turned into a plan for elimination. My hands shook as I photographed everything with the disposable camera Jack had given me. Each page confirmed what I already suspected. They had been staging this for more than a year. Faking dementia. Coaching me into confusion. Switching medications. Filming moments to make me look frail. Every detail, carefully built to prove I was unfit. And then I found the letter. Signed only with initials. MT. The timeline needs to accelerate. She's asking questions. Phase 3 must begin within 2 weeks. Phase 3, my death. I stuffed the papers back just as headlights swept across the front window. A car door slammed. Voices. Andrew and Claire. They were home. My heart thundered as I slipped out the back door, crouching in the garden. And then I froze. A baby's cry pierced the night from inside the house. A baby? My breath caught. Andrew and Claire never wanted children. They said they weren't ready, that their careers mattered more. But now, there was a baby in my house. I crouched behind the rose bushes I had planted 20 years ago, my heart racing as I listened. The crying grew louder. This wasn't just about my money anymore. It was about something much bigger. The sound of that baby's cry shook me to my core. For a moment, I thought my ears were playing tricks on me, but it came again. Sharp, real, needy. A baby in my home. My garden smelled of wet earth and roses as I crouched lower, my heart hammering so hard I feared Andrew or Claire would hear it. I pressed a hand to my mouth, struggling to breathe quietly. Andrew and Claire's voices floated through the open window. She was crying too hard to think straight, Claire said, her tone low and casual. Nobody suspects a thing. Andrew laughed lightly. And if they do? What are they going to investigate? Mom fell off a yacht. Happens all the time. I closed my eyes, the words stabbing deeper than the cold Atlantic had. My own son. Laughing about my death. Then came the cry again, louder this time, and Claire's sharp voice snapped. I'll get her. Her. I froze. My thoughts tumbled over themselves. Was the baby a girl? Who was she? And why did they have her? The front door slammed shut as they entered. I pressed myself against the side of the house, barely daring to breathe. Claire's heels clicked against the hardwood inside, and I could almost picture her picking up the baby with her practiced smile, rocking her like some kind of prize she'd won. Shoo! Claire cooed. It's all right. Mommy's here. Mommy. The word turned my stomach. I slipped into the shadows and hurried down the street until I was far enough to breathe again. My legs felt like they would give out beneath me, but I pushed forward, turning corner after corner until Jack's truck headlights flashed. He leaned out the window, frowning. You look like you've seen a ghost. I climbed in, still trembling. Worse, I whispered. I've seen my replacement. Jack drove in silence until we reached Mrs. Chen's cottage. Inside, with the door locked behind us, I told him everything, about the documents, the letter signed MT, and most of all the baby. Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed. A baby changes everything. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. Your son always said he didn't want kids. He told everyone he and Claire were too focused on their careers. So where did this child come from? I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. That's what I need to know. And I'll find out, no matter what it takes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the waves outside. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the baby's face, even though I hadn't actually seen her yet. My mind filled in the details. Tiny hands, soft cheeks, innocent eyes. A child pulled into something monstrous. By morning, my decision was made. Over breakfast, I looked at Jack and Mrs. Chen. I need to follow them. Wherever they take that baby, I need to see. She's the key. If I know her story, I'll know theirs. Jack shook his head. That's dangerous as hell. If they see you. They won't, I interrupted. My voice was steadier than I felt. To them, I'm fish food. Invisible. That gives me an advantage. Mrs. Chen placed a hand on mine. You'll need more than luck. You'll need someone skilled. Someone who knows how to watch without being seen. Her words made my stomach tighten. You know someone? She nodded. A private investigator. Danny Crawford. He owes me a favor. He's discreet. He's good. By noon, I found myself in a small office above a sandwich shop, facing a man with gray hair and sharp, restless eyes. Danny listened as I told my story from the beginning. Not once did he interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back, fingers steepled. So, he said finally, you want me to follow your son and his wife, find out about this mysterious baby, and uncover who's pulling the strings. That's right. And you're paying me with what? He raised an eyebrow. Because according to the newspapers, you're dead. Your assets are frozen. I slid an envelope across the desk. Cash. Emergency money. Robert had insisted we always keep tucked away for disasters. He had been wise enough to think ahead, even if I hadn't realized how much I'd need it. Danny flipped through the bills, then nodded. All right. I'll start today. I'll need photos of your son and daughter-in-law, addresses, routines. I handed him the copies from the disposable camera, showing Andrew and Claire entering my old house. His eyes lingered on the document with the MT signature. This handwriting looks familiar, he murmured, pulling out a magnifying glass. Professional. But distinct. I'll run it through my contacts. I leaned forward, desperate. Do whatever it takes. But be careful. They've already tried to kill me once. If they find out I'm alive. He cut me off, his eyes sharp. Then we'll make sure they don't. Leaving his office, I felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter, because for the first time, I wasn't alone in this fight. He was a professional. Someone who knew how to uncover secrets. But heavier, because the more we uncovered, the more dangerous it became. That evening, Mrs. Chen ladled soup into bowls while I stared out her kitchen window at the dark sea. The reflection of my face stared back at me, older, more tired, but harder too. They're moving quickly, I said softly. Every day they think I'm dead is another day they build their lie. Mrs. Chen set a hand on my shoulder. Then you move quicker. But don't forget, child, you're not only fighting for money. You're fighting for that baby too. Whoever she is, she didn't ask to be part of this. Her words sank deep. She was right. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protecting someone who couldn't protect herself. I clenched my fists, whispering a promise to myself and to the unseen baby. I won't let them use you. I won't let them erase me. And I won't let them win. For the first time since being pushed into the ocean, I felt more than just survival in my chest. I felt purpose. And purpose was stronger than fear. The following days passed in a haze of waiting, listening, and planning. Danny kept his word. He began shadowing Andrew and Claire, reporting back in quiet phone calls that always came late at night, as if secrecy itself was part of his blood. On the third night, I sat at Mrs. Chen's kitchen table with Jack and Tyler. The smell of ginger tea hung in the air, but my hands trembled too much to hold the cup. Finally, the phone rang. Margaret, Danny's voice came through, calm but tight. I've been following them. Your instincts were right. That baby. She isn't theirs. Not legally anyway. My chest squeezed. Then whose is she? That's what I'm digging into. But listen closely. Claire's been calling the child, her daughter, in public. Smiling, parading her at stores. But I checked records. No birth certificate in her name. No hospital records matching Claire Blake. It's as if the baby just appeared out of thin air. The room spun. A child without a trace? My stomach twisted at the possibilities. Danny continued. And there's more. Your lawyer, Patricia Holt? She's been seen entering their house several times. Not for brief visits, but long stays. Hours. Sometimes overnight. She's part of this. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Patricia. The woman Robert had trusted with every detail of our estate. The woman who had looked me in the eye and promised to protect me after his passing. She's guiding them, I whispered, rage burning through the fear. She's the one pulling the strings. Danny's voice lowered. Exactly. And that signature, MT. I ran it by a friend who used to work in government records. It matches someone known for handling offshore accounts. The initials belong to Martin Tate, Patricia's old colleague. He specializes in making money vanish across borders. The pieces clicked together. Patricia, Claire, Andrew, and now Martin Tate. A web of greed, each strand woven tighter around me. Jack muttered under his breath. Damn parasites. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus. And the baby? Any clue where she came from? Danny hesitated. Not yet. But I found something troubling. There's a rumor in their neighborhood. Claire's been telling people the baby is yours. The world tilted. Mine. I gasped. She's spinning a story, Danny explained. That before you passed, you had one last secret. An affair, an abandoned child, a scandal they graciously took responsibility for. It makes them look noble. Selfless. The grieving son and daughter-in-law, now raising your shame as their own. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady the pounding inside. My son. My blood. My name. They were dragging it all through filth just to make themselves look better. They're rewriting me again, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. First dementia. Now infidelity. Lies stacked on lies. Danny's voice hardened. I'll keep digging. But you need to prepare. Once I have proof, once I know where that baby came from, you'll need to strike fast. If they find out I'm on them, they'll bury everything. When the call ended, the silence in the cottage was heavy. Mrs. Chen finally spoke, her voice gentle but firm. They're not just stealing your fortune. They're stealing your identity. They're building a version of you that never existed. I shook my head slowly. No. Not anymore. I won't let them write my story. That night I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I tried, I heard the baby crying again, saw Claire's painted smile as she called herself, Mommy. My thoughts spun in circles. Who was she? Why did they have her? And what would happen to her if I failed? 2 mornings later, Danny returned with more. He laid photos on Mrs. Chen's table, each one sharper than a knife. Andrew walking into a bank with Patricia. Claire shopping with the baby in her arms, grinning for strangers. Patricia in whispered conversations with a tall, thin man who matched Martin Tate's description. They're moving funds, Danny said, pointing to one photo. Every day they think you're dead. More of your estate vanishes overseas. Soon, nothing will be left. They're cleaning house. I stared at the photos, my stomach hollow. Robert's legacy, our years of sacrifice, disappearing into accounts I'd never see. But even worse was the photo of Claire, smiling as the baby tugged at her necklace. She looked so natural, so motherly, like she had been born for the role. But I knew the truth. That baby wasn't hers. And I wouldn't rest until I found out who she belonged to. Danny, I asked, my voice barely steady, can you find the child's real family? He hesitated. It'll take time. But I'll try. Jack spoke up then, his voice gruff but steady. In the meantime, you need to protect yourself. What if they catch wind that you're alive? What if they send someone after you? I lifted my chin, feeling strength return. Then let them. If they want a ghost, I'll give them one. But this ghost fights back. That night, while the others slept, I sat at the window staring out at the dark sea. My reflection stared back at me, and for the first time, I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who had crawled out of the ocean, broken but breathing. Someone who had been buried but refused to stay dead. I whispered into the night, a vow to Robert, to myself, and to the baby whose cries still haunted me. They think I'm gone. But I'm here. And I'm coming for everything they tried to steal. Days blurred into nights as Danny dug deeper. Each time the phone rang, my stomach flipped, torn between fear of what he'd say and hope that finally we'd have answers. One evening, the cottage was quiet except for the sound of waves crashing against the shore. I sat near the fireplace, the old newspaper with my obituary crumpled in my lap, when Danny finally arrived in person. He didn't call ahead this time. That alone told me something had shifted. He stepped into the cottage, rain dripping from his coat, his face grim. "I've found something," he said, lowering himself into a chair. "And you're not going to like it." My hands tightened on the paper. "Tell me." He spread out a file of photos and documents on the table. His finger tapped one certificate. "The baby's name is Emily. But here's the catch. Her birth certificate is falsified. Different hospitals listed on different copies. Fake signatures. Someone's been scrubbing her trail clean." Mrs. Chen leaned closer, squinting. "So she's been erased?" Danny nodded. "Almost. But not completely. Whoever did this was good, but not perfect. I found traces in adoption records overseas. The baby was born in Eastern Europe, brought into the States under shady circumstances. No legal adoption filed here. Which means she doesn't belong to them," I finished, my voice trembling. Danny's eyes locked with mine. "Exactly. And if authorities knew, it wouldn't just be fraud. It would be kidnapping." The word made my chest tighten. Kidnapping. That innocent child, dragged into their schemes, treated like a pawn. Jack cursed under his breath. "Monsters." I stared at the photo of the baby Danny had slid forward. She had wide dark eyes and soft cheeks, her tiny hand reaching toward Claire's necklace. My throat closed. That little girl didn't ask for any of this. And yet she was the centerpiece of their lies. Danny leaned back. "And it gets worse. Patricia's been filing documents, claiming Emily as your hidden child, like I mentioned before. They're building a story that you had a scandal, that Andrew and Claire nobly took in this baby to save her from shame. It paints them as saints. And it gives them leverage over your estate, arguing that the child is a dependent heir." My hands shook. They're rewriting my life again. Turning me into a liar, a cheater, a fool. All so they can steal more. Danny's voice hardened. "This isn't just theft anymore. It's character assassination. If this story sticks, history will remember you as weak, confused, and corrupt. They want you erased body and soul." I stood suddenly, pacing the small room. My chest ached with fury. "No. I won't let them take my name. I won't let them raise that child on lies. She deserves truth. Robert deserves truth. And My voice cracked but I forced it steady. I deserve truth." Silence filled the room until Mrs. Chen spoke, her tone like iron. "Then you strike first. Before they bury you again." Danny nodded. "I can get proof. I've already tracked money trails leading to Martin Tate's offshore accounts. Patricia's fingerprints are all over the transfers. If we expose those documents alongside the falsified adoption, they'll collapse under their own lies." Jack leaned forward, voice low. "But timing matters. If they suspect Margaret's alive, they'll burn everything before it can be proven." I clenched my fists. "Then they won't suspect. They'll think I'm still dead, until the moment I'm standing right in front of them." The plan began to take shape. Danny would gather hard evidence. Jack would watch from the marina, keeping tabs on their movements. Mrs. Chen would keep me hidden until the moment was right. But inside, I was unraveling. Late at night, when the cottage was quiet, I lay awake thinking of Emily. I saw her eyes, her tiny hand, her future chained to Andrew and Claire's greed. What kind of life would she have with people who used her as a prop? What would she grow up believing about me? That I was a foolish old woman who drowned? That I had abandoned her? One night I whispered to myself, "No, little one. I'll save you too." The very next morning, Danny called again, his voice sharp with urgency. "Margaret, listen carefully. They're planning something. Andrew met with Patricia last night at the estate. They're pushing for full transfer of funds by the end of the week. Once it's done, they'll be untouchable." My breath caught. "End of the week?" "You don't have much time," he said. "If you want to stop them, it has to be now." The words echoed in my mind all day. Nah. The clock was ticking, not just for me, but for Robert's legacy, for Emily's future, for the truth itself. That evening, I stood on the beach outside Mrs. Chen's cottage, staring at the restless sea. The same sea that had tried to take me. The same sea Andrew thought had swallowed me whole. I let the salt wind sting my face as I whispered, "You didn't take me. And I'm not done yet." I turned back to the cottage, where Jack, Mrs. Chen, and Danny waited. My family may have betrayed me, but here in this small creaking house by the shore, I had found allies. Real ones. I stepped inside, lifted my chin, and said the words that sealed my fate. "It's time to go home." The night before I returned home, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cottage sounded like a warning. Every gust of wind carried the memory of Andrew's cold eyes. But beneath the fear was a fire that no storm could put out. They had tried to erase me, to bury me, to replace me. And tomorrow, they would see that ghosts don't stay buried. Danny spent the night preparing, printing documents, arranging files. Offshore transfers, falsified adoption papers, recordings of Patricia's conversations, all lined up like ammunition. Jack checked his truck twice, ready to drive us at dawn. Mrs. Chen, though small and frail-looking, stood straighter than I'd ever seen, her eyes burning with quiet pride. "You're not just fighting for yourself," she told me softly as I sipped tea. "You're fighting for every elder they think they can silence. For every voice they've tried to erase. Don't forget that when you stand in front of them." I nodded, clutching her words like armor. By sunrise, we were on the road. My old house came into view, the roses out front blooming as if nothing evil had ever touched the soil. My heart twisted at the sight. Home. And yet, not home anymore. Inside, laughter echoed. Andrew's laughter. My son's laughter. The sound that once warmed me now felt sharp enough to cut skin. Claire's voice followed, sweet and smooth as honey, laced with lies. And then, Emily's cry. That fragile sound, pulling me forward when my legs wanted to give out. We stepped into the living room without knocking. The moment was burned into my mind forever. Andrew froze, his face draining of color as he saw me standing there. Claire dropped the glass she was holding, shards scattering across the floor. Patricia spun around, her eyes narrowing, fury flashing before she masked it with calm. I spoke first, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Did you miss me?" Andrew stumbled back, his lips trembling. You're supposed to be dead." I finished for him. "Yes, I've seen the obituary. Quite flattering, really. Except for the part about dementia." "That was your touch, wasn't it, Claire?" Claire's face twisted. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I snapped. "You tried to kill me. You lied about me. You used my name, my life, my husband's legacy, and now you've dragged an innocent child into your schemes." Patricia's voice cut through, calm and sharp. "Margaret, listen to yourself. You sound unhinged. No one will believe a word you say." Danny stepped forward, slamming a thick file onto the coffee table. "They will when they see this." Patricia's mask cracked. Andrew lunged for the file, but Jack blocked him. Claire backed away, clutching Emily tightly, her eyes darting between us like a cornered animal. I turned to her, my voice breaking. "She's not yours, is she?" Claire's lips trembled. She isn't," Danny confirmed, pulling out the forged documents. "Emily was trafficked into this country. Patricia and Martin Tate handled the paperwork. You paraded her around as your daughter, as Margaret's secret child, to secure the estate. But it's fraud. Worse than fraud. It's kidnapping." Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Emily whimpered in Claire's arms, too young to know she was the center of a storm. Andrew finally spoke, his voice desperate. "We didn't have a choice. The money. Dad left it all tied up, locked away. We deserved it. We deserved more than waiting for you to die slowly in that big house, hoarding everything while we struggled." The word stabbed deeper than the ocean waves ever had. My own son, looking me in the eye, saying he deserved my life more than I did. Tears burned, but I held them back. "You had a choice," I said softly. "You could have stood beside me. You could have honored your father's name. Instead, you tried to erase me. And for what? Money? Lies? A child you don't even love. Claire's eyes flickered, guilt flashing for a moment before she hardened again. Patricia, on the other hand, sneered. Do you think anyone will believe this? You're a frail old woman claiming ghosts and conspiracies. They'll lock you up for real this time. Danny pressed play on a recorder. Patricia's voice filled the room, cold and undeniable. The timeline needs to accelerate. Phase 3 must begin within 2 weeks. Patricia's face drained of color. Jack folded his arms. Looks like your Phase 3 just collapsed. Police arrived within the hour. Danny had already contacted a detective he trusted, one who didn't bow to money or influence. Evidence was handed over, statements were taken, and Patricia was led out in handcuffs, her calm mask shattered into fury. Claire clung to Emily until officers gently pried the baby from her arms. Andrew tried to protest, to claim innocence, but the look in his eyes betrayed him. I watched it all, numb and raw, until Emily was placed in the arms of Child Services. She cried, reaching back, and for a brief moment, her tiny hand stretched toward me. My heart broke, but I whispered a promise in my soul. You'll be safe now. You'll know love, not lies. Hours later, when the house finally emptied of uniforms and chaos, I stood alone in the living room. My roses bloomed outside, untouched by greed or betrayal. For the first time, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was healing. Mrs. Chen stepped beside me. It's over. I shook my head softly. No. It's beginning again. My life. On my terms. Jack smiled faintly. You've got friends now. Not the kind who share blood, but the kind who show up when it matters. That's family too. I looked at them, at Mrs. Chen, at Jack, even at young Tyler, and felt something I thought I had lost forever. Belonging. As the sun set, I walked through my garden, the roses brushing against my hands. The same garden Andrew had once played in as a boy. The same garden Claire had sneered at for being too old-fashioned. It was mine still. And so was my name. I whispered into the evening air, as if Robert were listening. They tried to erase me, love. But I'm still here. Stronger. And they'll never take that from me. Sparkle's moral lesson. Greed blinds people until they can't see the value of love, family, and truth. Betrayal may wound the deepest, but it also reveals who truly stands with you. Blood alone doesn't define family. Loyalty, kindness, and courage do. And when life tries to silence you, the greatest victory is standing tall and speaking your truth, no matter how hard they try to erase it.